Okay, fully back. Okay. The lighting is kind of horrible, but it's fine. Okay. Okay. Oh, a lot better actually. Okay. Should maybe. Okay. We're probably just waiting on her, but I'll send a couple messages in the Slack just to make sure people are actually pulling up. Oh, there's like 5 people in the waiting room. Okay, wait. Hey everyone, we're just waiting on Miss Representative Nguyen. Feel free to like put on your cameras when she does arrive. She's really great. Really, really cool person. Can't wait for y'all to meet her. Hi, Miss Lynn. How are you? Oh my gosh. Okay. Hopefully she can hear me. Hi. How are you? So good to see you. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, I am. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're great. It's great to have you too. Okay. So hi everyone. My name is Ankita and I'm the current chair for the High School Democrats of America AAPI Caucus. I will be hosting this evening. We're super excited to welcome Representative Tram Nguyen, the first Vietnamese American woman in the Massachusetts legislature and the highest ranking Asian American woman in the state house. She's done incredible work on issues such as mental health, immigration, and domestic abuse, and has been a huge advocate for youth engagement in politics. Tonight, we're going to discuss how we as high schoolers can get involved in the legislative process, learn from Wet Wen's path from an immigration and domestic abuse lawyer to a state legislator, and get any advice for anyone thinking about pursuing a career in politics. Gwen, thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to start by sharing a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to get into politics, we'd love to hear it.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. I hope your school year is going well. And I want to especially thank Ankita for inviting me to speak with you all. I was really glad to meet you in Atlanta this past campaign season and was glad that you were able to work with my legislative aide, Bella, to make sure that we fit this in. As introduced, I'm so thrilled and honored, truly, to be in the Massachusetts legislature, frankly, at a time like this as Democrats. It's been a hard few weeks, right, since the election. But I've had some time to think it through. And, I'm just so thrilled to be able to be in a blue state like Massachusetts, where we're able to lead and be very proactive in many ways as we're prepping for next session. I want to just give you a little bit of an overview of my district and then share a little bit about my background so you know where I came from. And so my district is the 18th Essex District, which is in the Northeast region of Massachusetts, for those who are familiar. That includes the towns of Andover, Boxford, North Andover, and Tewksbury. I live in the town of Andover. And but I so just to back up until, to give you a little bit of history, I moved to this district after law school. I came to the US when I was 5 years old as political refugees with my family when I was 5 years old, living in an adjacent town or city, Lawrence, Massachusetts, where really it's like the city of immigrants. A lot of different immigrant families have gone through there. They've brought in a lot of Asian folks back in the early 90s when I came, and now the city is primarily folks from Puerto Rico as well as the Dominican Republic. And so my lived experiences and my upbringing have had a great impact on me. They led me to pursue a career in the law, influenced me to eventually run for office, and really have shaped how I view the way that our government can work for people, can work to uplift people, uplift everyone without leaving vulnerable people behind. And so, as a daughter of hardworking immigrant parents, my dad I came over with my parents and my younger sister. My dad had fought alongside American soldiers for South Vietnam. So after the communists essentially won the Vietnam War in 1975, he spent 8 years as a prisoner of war in a re-education camp. But he never gave up hope on building a better life for myself and my younger sister and for my parents. And my parents worked very hard to get us to the United States. And we came over under the humanitarian operation executive order, which allowed families like mine to come here and start our lives anew. My dad, I remember him telling the story of how we came with just $100 in their pockets, first coming to a refugee camp in Thailand, and then eventually making our way to the United States, specifically in Massachusetts. But as you can imagine, coming from Vietnam versus Massachusetts. I don't know who here, if I can hear show of hands, who here has been to Massachusetts and has been here in the winter, like January. This is nothing compared to what it's like in January, right? And I remember vividly the struggles of being new immigrants, right? We came over, we didn't have coats. I remember wearing a yellow Ninja Turtle sweater that was barely, warm enough. And we had to learn a new language, a new culture, and we're very thankful that we got donations from Catholic Charities, and we had a host family who had to help us enroll for me to be enrolled in school, and for my parents to be enrolled in community college to learn English, and then other Vietnamese families as well helped my family settle in. And my parents were very determined to make a new life here. So through their hard work, working multiple jobs, barely making minimum wage for each of the jobs, and learning English through these classes, they gave me the stability that I needed. They were able to. We came in '92. They were able to buy their first home in '98, where they actually still lived. But that stability allowed me to excel in school, to graduate at the top of my high school class, becoming the first person in my family to graduate from college and then eventually law school and then graduate school. And throughout my childhood, my parents really exemplified that leadership style that I would eventually emulate in my own work. And it was because of them that I would go on to truly admire and passionately advocate for vulnerable communities and working families. At Tufts, where I went to undergrad, I thought I wanted to study medicine. I went there intending to go straight through to Tufts Medical School. But I realized, first of all, that I was that blood makes me queasy. So that really did not allow me to lead this path into medicine, which I'm very thankful for because it led me elsewhere. But like most Asian parents, I'm sure you've all heard different variations of this of, oh, you got to be a doctor, you got to be XYZ. And I allowed myself that time and space. And I want to say this, particularly as high school students, you have the whole world ahead of you, right? And some of you may know what you want to do in college after high school, but some of you may not know, and that is okay. Even for myself, my whole life I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and then I came to college and realized that was not for me. And I gave myself that time and space to change majors several times to then discover my passion for history and the study of people and the study of our society and how to uplift those in our society. So I decided to major in sociology and American studies with a minor in psychology. I learned what it means for us to work together, to come together as a community so that we could then help each other out. And these college majors enabled me to reflect on the struggles of immigrant families like mine, my own experiences growing up, and how they shaped me. And I realized right after undergrad that I wanted to go to law school so that I could pursue work in civil rights. And I had the incredible opportunity to intern at Greater Boston Legal Services, where I saw firsthand how the law could be used to help the most vulnerable people among us and how lawyers could make such a huge difference for families that need it most. But then I decided not to go to law school right away. I took 2 years off where when I worked for the 2010 census, which is another incredible learning experience where I saw firsthand the struggles of limited English proficiency and how they affect people wanting to get involved with government, getting the resources that they needed, and also just how people have such a hard time breaking through red tape and the bureaucracy of government. They didn't know their rights. They didn't know what types of access they could have. And that experience really inspired me to start thinking about how to better advocate for marginalized people. So I decided to attend Northeastern University School of Law after 2 years between undergrad and then, and I was able to focus on public service work, and eventually I got an Equal Justice Works Fellowship, working with a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to focus on survivors of domestic violence in the Vietnamese American community. And I was one of 5 people in the country to get that grant during 2013, as some of you might be too young to remember that was the recession where many of us struggled to find jobs. But I was able to get that grant to then start my first job as an attorney, advocating for survivors, for low-wage workers, immigrants, veterans, people with disabilities, and other really vulnerable folks. And I saw firsthand how the law could really impact people, how good laws could help them, how bad laws can really impact them, or the lack of laws could really shape how people interact with our government. And so that was how I ended up becoming a lawyer and eventually decided to run for office because I saw the power of policy and really wanted to make a difference.
Thank you so much. That was really well. That was a really great answer to that question. A lot of your journey has been something I've like found out through researching, but a lot of it hasn't, and it's really nice. It's really good to know that there's like so many very different like Asian experiences because I've come from a different background. Everyone else here also comes from a different background. So it's obviously very heartening to know that like we're all AHPI and yet we're so different in every single way. And that's okay. And it's beautiful in that as well. My next question for you would definitely be what was it like running? Did it feel like, did you ever feel any pushback, like familial pushback? Like, I feel like that might be common, maybe not for you, but maybe like societal pushback as well. And how did that just feel like running and eventually winning?
Yeah, great question. I want to make sure that you understand my district first before I talk about what it was like to run, right? To give you a landscape. So I mentioned the four towns. It's 90 at the time, it was about 94% white. We had some Asian Americans in there, and most of them are either Indian Americans or Chinese Americans in this community, and particularly new immigrants coming here to work because we have life sciences and other types of industries here where people can come in and get those special visas to come in here to work. And so I give you that background because when I ran, um, they told me, they meaning the Democratic Party, did a poll and showed me the numbers and said I had a 30% chance of winning. Why? Because they had never had a person of color represent them. At the time, I was 31 years old. I looked very young. I remember one time I was door knocking and it was the summer. I was in, t-shirt, jeans, whatever it may be. And I looked even younger, right? And not, with a suit on or whatnot. And I was walking up a driveway. I got to this woman's house, and she's an older white woman. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you here to sell me Girl Scout cookies?" And so, if you can imagine that, I had a lot going against me, right? I looked young, I looked inexperienced, but I was able to have this conversation with her and talk to her about how my vision of building a more inclusive and welcoming community. I grew, even though I didn't grow up in the district, I grew up in the area and was very familiar with the Merrimack Valley, where I decided to come back after law school to settle in this community to then run for that seat. And after, having these conversations with not just her, but thousands of people at the doors, I took 7 months off out of my work to run full time so I can have these conversations with people. And it was very critical to have these conversations with folks and meet them literally at their kitchen table to talk about the issues that they care about and how I, as someone who has a background in the law and advocacy, could fully represent them. And it also helped that they have they have had terrible experiences with their previous rep. That I ran against an 8-year incumbent who refused to get back to me in the 2 years that I tried to reach out to him. And many people said the same thing, that they could not reach out to him and get him to respond to them. And I think that was one of the main reasons why how I won. I met people where they were at, had these conversations with folks, and essentially made a commitment to them that I would be responsive to them, whether or not I agree with them. And I think that that's very key. I don't think any legislator could promise people that they could 100% agree with their constituents. That's not true. And that's not necessary because, as you all know, in order to win any election, you have to just win 50% in one vote, right? Like, there was a colleague of mine last election cycle who literally won with one vote. So the reality of it is that most districts, but mine particularly as a purple district, for those who are not familiar with the term, it means that we have equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and the majority of folks are unenrolled in either party. And so you have to have discussions with people from across the political spectrum. So of course I was not going to agree with anyone 100% of the time, but what you can promise them is that I will listen to them. I will make sure that I make informed decisions on their behalf, and that means listening to people with all different views and perspectives. And that was That was our campaign. Our campaign was a promise to the people that we will work hard for them, we will listen to them, but ultimately the decision was on us to make choices, policy choices that would impact them in the long run and hopefully impact them in a positive way. And so when I ran, that was what we put out there. And, I ignored the 30% chance of winning because I wanted to make sure that people see that there is an alternative to what they've had for the last 8 years. And frankly, I didn't want to run. If you'd asked me when I was your age what I wanted to be, number one, I wouldn't have said I was going to be a lawyer, never mind a politician, right? I was so focused on being a doctor, and which ultimately didn't work out. But I never thought I was going to run for office. And I felt compelled to do so because I felt like my representative at that time was not representing my values. He wanted to ban abortion this lifetime. He was anti union, essentially anti immigrant. And what the straw that broke the camel's back was when he filed a bill that would have allowed police officers to stop anyone who looks illegal. Let me repeat that. He wanted to have uh, uh, police to have the ability to arrest anyone who looks illegal. Essentially, he wanted to codify the racial profiling. And that was very offensive to me as a woman of color, as someone who, and I'm sure you've heard about the term perpetual foreigners. Many people attribute that to Asian Americans, particularly, that we're not really from here, that we are other, and we're forever that new immigrant, right? And this man wanted to codify that not only against Asian Americans, but all other people of color who do not look like him, right? Who don't look, quote unquote, American enough for him. And so I decided to run against him against all odds. And I was very lucky in that was the year in 2018, the first election after the first Trump election, and people came out in support. We had hundreds and hundreds of volunteers coming out to support us. I was very lucky in that year. I was endorsed by both President Obama and Secretary Clinton, one of the only few people to get endorsed by both of them for that election cycle. And we inspired young people, new people who've never voted before to come out to vote. And so that's the difference between when they told me that I had a 30% chance of winning, but I won 55% of the vote. So where did that 25% come from? They came from people who were disengaged before, but we put in the work to get them to be engaged. And so many of these folks were voting for the very first time. And we wanted to continue that momentum to bring people in, to make sure that people understand how policy can directly impact their lives and how government could be used for good. And so that was the political landscape that I came into when I got elected in 2018 and then took office in 2019. And then, as you all recall, 2020 was when COVID hit. So I had a year before I prepped for all that. But I think that my skill sets from when I was an attorney and an advocate for vulnerable people set me up to be successful during COVID when we were trying to outreach to the most vulnerable among us to make sure that they were okay, to make sure that they had access to resources and that they know where the resources are to turn for help. And that was when I was able to really work with my colleagues to implement many of the policies that you have now probably have heard about. We implemented essentially expanded the unemployment system so more people can have access to that. We increased access to food pantries and free lunches at school, et cetera. All of these programs were implemented during the COVID era because we realized that when we lift up the most vulnerable among us, everyone else is lifted up as well. And so that was how I got into office. I'm now very thrilled to be coming into my fourth term, getting elected again to serve for another 2-year term, and really making sure that we continue on this path of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But not only that, but to really focus on how to bring more people in who have never been at the table and make sure that their voices are being heard and that we're being responsive to their needs.
Thank you so much. Definitely having that commitment to serving the population that's never actually been talked to, the people that people like to forget and not think about. is definitely what I think is a hallmark of a great politician. So thank you so much for like being that for your constituents. Definitely one of my other asks, well, I mean, one of my other questions would be, what would you say is some of your most impactful moments of like your career? Like, what would you say is like where you think you made the most impact, whether it be like a conversation or an initiative, whichever like you feel represents what you mean, represents what you think represents that more.
Sure. So some of my most impactful moments in my career have been those that allowed me to connect deeply with people I serve and to grow as a leader. I am a strong believer in being a lifelong learner, which is actually why this job has been so fascinating to me because no day is ever the same. I've had so many opportunities that I never thought I'd ever have. Particularly as I mentioned to you, as an immigrant girl who came here at 5 years old, I never imagined I would be shaking hands and hanging out with President Biden just this past Thursday, celebrating the 18th championship of the Celtics. Like my husband and I were at the White House. The president took my phone and took a selfie with us. Like that is not something that I imagined that I'd be at this point in my life. But that is exactly what we want to encourage people is when you take risks, like they say, higher risks, higher rewards. And I took that leap of faith to run for office and to really get to know people and to get to know what they need. But also that helped me figure out what I wanted, what I needed. And that is to continue to help people. And so I've decided to, for instance, I graduated from law school in 2013, and I decided to go back to school. I just earned my master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School this past May. I decided to come back to school a decade after graduating because I wanted to be in a community of leaders from across the world who are driven to make a difference in their own way, to give me new perspectives and to allow me to sharpen my skills to create meaningful change. I loved my job as an attorney, as a litigator, helping families by families, people, clients by clients. But the ability to create substantive change, transformative change, are things that I'm very, very eager to do. And it's humbling and inspiring to be among those who have those same commitments. And it reinforced my commitment to public service and to be around those from across the world who care so much about climate change, about equity, about making sure that we are feeding those, addressing issues of poverty and housing and transportation, all of these really big picture things that we as policymakers get to work on has really inspired me to do more. And of course, another impactful moment was my very first election, like being I never imagined that in 2018 I would become the first Vietnamese American to ever get elected into the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And knowing that my community believed in me and believed in my mission, my vision, was such an honor that I'll never forget. But beyond that, to be able to then become a policymaker and working, especially during COVID, where none of us knew what we were doing, and we were all remote. I was very new. I was very lucky in that my legislative director, who's still with me, he started out as my legislative aide, but we were working, both of us, 80 hours per week, responding to people, directing them to places where they could get the assistance that they need so that their children can be fed, so that they can have a roof over their heads. Like those are the impactful moments. Those are the stories that are going to stick with me. And in fact, I sometimes still hear from my constituents that people we've helped years and years ago. They remember these things, right? And of course, the impact is also in the policy that we are able to pass. This is teamwork. I did not do any of this alone. I'm very lucky in that we were in the past 6 years we were able to pass 10 bills. Many of them are relating to labor and employment, survivors of domestic violence, making sure that we're helping our seniors, our people with disabilities, et cetera. But two very important bills that we just got passed in the last few months. relate to helping survivors of domestic violence, especially those who have been victimized by coercive control and technological abuse, and also to allow judges to take away guns from those who've been convicted of or been issued a harassment prevention order because they've been harassing others in their lives. And so these policies will have long lasting effect for years to come, for even after I'm no longer here in office. And I think that that's the type of impact that I continue to seek. These moments stand out so much because often they're the ones where I see that direct impact on people, where it's a constituent telling me about how a law has helped their families, their lives, or me talking to you all, mentoring you all, talking to young folks and getting them excited, getting them engaged, talking to just regular people on the streets and letting them know how what I actually do and how I could help them or my office could help them has been these moments of a reminder to me of the why. Why am I doing this work? The why behind all of this. And if you are following Harvard Kennedy School, that's what they drill in you. What is your why? And if your why is to help people, this job is the best job that you could have.
I definitely agree. Like, as someone who's like barely not even out of high school, like being this engaged and talking to people has been crazy. So I definitely like can see how even being at any age and getting to have all these opportunities of like making substantial change would be really, really amazing. Like I would definitely want to end up doing something as like you do, like definitely even half as accomplished as you are for sure. That does lead to my next question is how do you engage youth and like do you and how do you continue to engage like younger voters and like what do you think of the youth vote? Like I mean probably I can rephrase that. How do you believe the youth vote matters and how do you plan to continue to engage younger voices? And if you were to be talking to anyone from Massachusetts, what would be your recommendation for any of them trying to look to get involved with the legislative session?
Great question. And so, as I started telling you all, I talk to young people all the time. We have Phillips Academy. I'm sure many of you have heard of that boarding school, but we also have many public schools, and I continue to go to government classes. And also, we have Merrimack College and a few other local colleges. And so, I'm very, very invested in young people. I firmly believe that everyone, especially young people, has an important role to play in our society, which works best when we're all engaged and invested in making our lives better together, right? We have a duty to work together to help each other succeed, and we should leverage the privileges we've been given to pay it forward and lift up other people who may not have the same advantages. I mean, I'm assuming most of you are going on to college, but that's not necessarily the case. Some people may go on to trade schools. Some people may go on and get apprenticeships and join a union. Whatever path it is that you choose to take, we want to give you all the advantages in the world so that you could be successful in that path, which is why I want to have these conversations to talk to you about how you can be engaged and involved every single step of the way to get you to where you need to be. And so there are plenty of ways for you to get involved. And I suggest starting to get on that ladder of engagement. And that could be either working on an issue that you care about. So when we talk about getting engaged with campaigns, you can get involved with a candidate and a campaign that we have, a candidate who you believe in, and who are folks who are advocating for the changes that you're looking for. So that's one way to get involved. But campaigns could also mean issue campaigns. If you care about the environment, what does that look like? How can you organize and get others to be engaged? If you care about gun safety, if you care about whatever it may be. I have to say, I'm very fortunate. I named all the high schools in the area. When in previous years where we were before Biden got elected, the first Trump administration, there were many rallies and many sort of gatherings, and many of them were organized by high school students, by college students, with the help of legislators like myself, supporting them, getting the word out, getting the security involved, but making sure it's led by youth because you all are the future, and we want to be able to encourage you to be the leaders that you aspire to be. And so I encourage you to start thinking about that again. You know, that first wave of students were taking the reins, and we want to make sure that we are paving, you know, helping to smooth the path out for you to make it easier for you to take the reins as well going forward. It's going to be a guy, you know, it's going to be a tough 4 years. I can tell you that much. And so we need all the engagement that we can get from young folks like yourself. And of course, you can also get involved in voter registration, educating others like yourself on how to be more involved. Like the fact that you are a part of this group just shows how politically engaged you are. Let's try building on that. Let's get others to be involved as well, right? And the exciting news is that you never fully know where these adventures and the connections you make along the way will lead you. And that is the beauty of organizing. That is the beauty of working with other people. That is why I'm so proud to be a union member. I'm a UAW member. I continue to work with unions because I believe in the power of collective action, of learning from one another, of working with each other to build a better future for all. And as a legislator, I'm committed to creating spaces where people feel, for young people to feel empowered to engage, to share their ideas and take action, whether that's internships in my office. We have a very robust internship program, or hosting town halls, or having these sort of meetings, or doing mentorships, or hiring people. Bella came straight out of undergrad to come work for us. And I want to make sure that your voices are being heard and reflected in the decisions that we continue to make every day. Because the challenges that we face, whatever it may be, require the kind of bold, innovative thinking that young people bring to the table. And frankly, being around young people keeps me young. Bella tells me to do videos or go on Instagram and try fun new things, and I follow along, and we need that sort of energy. You're not just the leaders of tomorrow, you're the leaders of today. And so I'm here to help you amplify your voices and work with you to build that future where everyone can thrive. And in fact, Bella can show you the video that we did to the Carpenter song, whatever that song is. This shows how old I am. I just did the video. I had no idea. But these are sort of things that we want your creativity to make us better, right? We talk about, funny little videos, but that is just the crux of it, just the very top of it. The Why we want to get young people in is that it's a foot in the door, so you understand how government works, so that you can better be engaged in government, and perhaps it'd be easier for you to run for office one day once you get to know whether that's the state house, Congress, or other levels of government.
Absolutely. I think Bella said the song was Espresso. So yes, that is a very famous Sabrina Carpenter song. I love that. I would love to open up the floor to other questions, but before we do that, I think it would be great just to say thank you. Bella, it's been great to talk to you and all of that. It was great. And thank you for everyone else who came from the AAPI caucus. I definitely appreciate y'all coming in and talk and hearing from Miss Nguyen. Rep Nguyen, obviously, she's amazing. And before we open it up for more questions, I do have other ones I could ask you, but if anyone else has others, we can also incorporate this as well. A quick photo for sure. Let me see. Can everyone take their put their cameras on and stuff like that? That would be great. Okay. Kyle, Edwin, Achatan, y'all good? Okay.
Bella, can you take the screenshot for me, or whoever?
Okay. I can also take it and I can send it to you, but if you want to both do it, I think that'd be also good too as well. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Bella, do you want to take your own photo possibly, or if that's not something, that's all good too. Okay, you got it. Awesome. Okay, good. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or anything like that. But if not, I do have a set of other questions that I could ask her if we don't really have any. Okay, Ishan, you got it. Go for it.
It's great to meet you, Representative. And so my question was, obviously recognizing that Trump has won, and I'm from North Carolina, so it's a pretty red state with this election. Most of our state legislatures also red. So how would you recommend how would you recommend giving a voice to those who need it in this time and doing that as like someone who's young?
Yes, great question. So, like I suggested earlier, this is the time for us to join different organizations. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We've been here before, and I think that that's our advantage, right? During the first Trump administration, when you were too young, that was when we were new. We didn't know what we were doing, but now there's already an infrastructure in place. I think a lot of areas, including North Carolina, had many different organizations that you should get yourself plugged in right now because we will need to be very quick in our responses to all the changes that they're going to start implementing once he takes office in January. And so we need everyone to be as engaged as possible starting now. So this is the time for you to start researching. I can't speak to the organizations that exist in North Carolina, but I'm pretty confident that you can go through your Democratic Party there and they could direct you. But the key is to be organized, right? We can't we need to build more solidarity among us so that we could then counter these forces that are going to be coming hot and heavy, particularly for states like yours in North Carolina, where you likely will do a lot of defensive work versus, blue states like Massachusetts, California, New York. We can do a lot more proactive things, such as, how to protect pregnant people from, being persecuted if they come to our state to get the care they need, for instance. But we need you all to be able to collaborate with us and be more organized in that way. And also, there will be opportunities for meetings, and I'm very committed to making sure that in these meetings we are including young people to give that feedback of the issues that you care about, that you're seeing on the ground. And as a Democratic Party, I think that our commitments on inclusion, and that includes pulling young people into the fold. I know that I'm not sure how old all of you are, but once you go to college too, you can join Young Dems or college students, Democratic Party. There are just so many different groups that you can join so that they can continue to support you in staying engaged.
Thank you so much. And just kind of a follow-up question. So
Sure.
I remember when you were talking about your experiences in running for state legislature, how you talked about you lived in a purple district. And my question was, how were you able to appeal to people that were like already Republican? They already had like they had their core kind of conservative values. So how did you appeal to those as someone who's more progressive?
Great question. So, I'm going to break down my purple district a little bit more for you. We have about 25% Democrats, about 15 to 20% Republicans enrolled into a particular party. And then the rest of people are unenrolled. As I mentioned, many of these people may lean one way or the other. But I have to say that unlike North Carolina, a lot of the Republicans here may actually be Democrats elsewhere, and I can explain why. They're more socially liberal than probably some even Democrats in North Carolina, but they're fiscally conservative. And so when we're talking about investments, I talk about how I came up from a poor family, and we know how to save. We know how to make, get the bang for our buck. And I can commit to being a legislator who will make smart investments on their behalf. So that doesn't mean I'm going to come back and be a fiscal conservative, but that means that I want to make investments in young people or education because we want smart people. I want to invest in transportation because that will help grow our economy. It's about the messaging. Right? These are all core progressive values, but I talk it in terms that they care about. They want to care about their pockets. Let me talk to you about how these investments will actually help you in the long run and save the Commonwealth money. And so it's about making these pivots for a message that's so true to my character, but appeals to them. and how investing in working people will help our economy in the long run. We'll make sure that Massachusetts has the lowest unemployment rate in the country is a benefit to our Commonwealth and why so many people continue to come to our Commonwealth. So that's the sort of messaging. It is a progressive message. I'm working with working families. I'm working with immigrants. I'm working on making sure that we're investing in low income schools. But the reasoning behind that is appealing to them. And so all of us could learn from this. And I think that that was some of the issues that we were facing with the DNC and with this last election cycle was that unfortunately, Vice President Harris had 100 days to come up with her message that could appeal to broad people. And that was a very short time. Remember what I mentioned to you. I took 7 months off out of my job to run for this small seat representing 42,000 people. And that took me 7 months to kind of prep myself to get me in that position. Imagine running for the United States president and having 100 days. That's a really tough call. And so for many of us, it's really about getting to know the people and messaging our values and priorities in a way that that they understand.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very illuminating. Definitely something to keep in mind of as people decide to run, as you decide to like talk to people, because as someone in Georgia, you definitely have a mixed bag. Like within my own high school, even I would hear people talking about abortion as a God-given right, and then other people would be saying, "Why don't you just keep your legs closed?" And it was just like the diversity in terms of, I guess, ideologies is definitely something that's opened my mind to other options and other things. And yet, I'm still also what I believe in, which is definitely staunchly democratic values. So it's definitely a lot of different ways, and I feel like it's good to be open to other perspectives, which is another thing that you emphasized. Vid, do you want to go?
Yeah, I do. Hi, nice to meet you, Representative. So I know you talked a lot about your journey and how you got to the position that you're in today. I want to know what qualities do you think is most important for somebody that wants to be in a position like you and aims to have a career in politics similar to you?
So number one, I think I want to reiterate what Ankita just mentioned is the ability to listen. Listening is a skill set, right? That I think a lot of us underestimate. Most of us, when we think of elected officials, we think of public speaking. We think of the ability to, be able to just talk and convince people, right? But most of my job is actually listening. And active listening is so key because, as we were talking about, actually, I want to refer back to the last question about how did I convince people who may even be of the opposite party to support me. If you listen long enough, you actually find a lot more commonalities and common ground than you expected going into a conversation, right? And that's why listening is so key. Not only is it helpful for you to hear their perspective, and I'm a staunch supporter and a believer that you actually learn more from people you disagree with than the people you agree with because it's basically an echo chamber when you're talking to people you agree with, but when you're talking to those who you disagree with, you gain new perspectives and also just a different way of thinking and responding to folks. And I think that by virtue of being a lawyer and the skill sets I was able to build as a litigator, being able to listen has been a huge part of my job and how I continue to emphasize that with my team is that we need to just listen to what is it that they want because most of the time I realize that we all want the same things. We just have very different ways of getting there. And so how do I find that common ground so that they can see my vision actually matches up with theirs? Like I was just saying earlier, it's about that messaging. Like if you go to any random person, Republican or Democrat, and you're like, I want to have that, students to have a good education, people to have good housing and, clean air and water. I'm willing to bet that most people will agree with you, whatever party they're in, right? But it's how do we get there? And so that's why listening is so key. And one of the important things that I've learned in grad school more recently, or rather a reminder, is that when you listen and you open yourself up to someone, it's better for you to build these relationships too. So then you can be more vulnerable and more open minded to then find that compromise to move things forward. And I also want to remind folks, especially I know young people, when you hear the word compromise, it may not sound like a sexy word or like an important thing to focus on. Trust me, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and when they hear compromise, it's like this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, am I compromising my values, or am I compromising, the things that I've cared about? That's not necessarily the case, because especially as a lawyer, I know that a compromise is a good, it's a middle ground that you reach after listening to what the other side wants, then talking about your side and finding that collaboration and ability to move forward on a particular issue. And so I think about that in those terms, and that's how I'm able to get so many bills passed, where I have to convince my colleagues who may or may not agree with me that this is the path that we're going to take forward that could benefit both sides essentially. And so, this is why I bring these issues up of like listening is the number one thing. And then the second thing is being open-minded and actually admit when you're wrong. Like that's not another, you think it's a simple thing, but when it comes to ego and when it comes to being in elected office, particularly for many of us, we're type A personalities, right? And I continue to say that I am not wrong, but I'm not wrong most of the time, but when I am wrong, I will be willing to admit it, because that is how you build trust with people. This entire job is about relationships, right? And so when you are wrong, you continue to dig in. That's when people just start losing faith in you, because you're not authentic to yourself, you're not authentic to them, and you're not kidding, you're not fooling anyone. So just be authentic to yourself, admit it, try to be right whenever you can. But when you are wrong, or when you see a different perspective that starts to make sense to you, that is okay. That is not compromising your values. It's actually just you learning more, and you're making a more informed decision because you have more information at your disposal, right? When I was younger, if I write a paper and I've done the research, I'm like, this is it. This is the answer. This has to be the answer. But then I realized that it's very humbling being in this job, because I would file a bill. I've worked with my team on the bill for months. I'm like, oh, this is a great bill. We're going to go in. Da, 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 da. Everyone's going to love it. No, you don't. It's one of 8,000 bills that I need to kind of elevate. And sometimes I would talk to even supporters of mine who would then come in with a very fresh perspective and say, actually, this piece of your bill, it's not going to work because of XYZ. And it's up to me to say, like, you're right. I was wrong in that. I didn't think that through. Thank you for that information. Let's incorporate that. So bills I'm filing now look very different from bills that I filed 6 or 7 years ago when I first came into office. And that's a good thing, because it's incorporating different opinions from those who are very different from me. And that's why diversity matters so much, because you want different people at the table, different stakeholders with very different perspectives to solve these very nuanced issues, right? And so that's why I'm a strong proponent of those two strong skill sets, among others.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Sorry, babe. Thank you so much, Ms. Nguyen. Okay, we'll take questions from Shun, Jack, and Edwin. Let's go for Shun, please. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Shun. I'm a junior in San Francisco, California. Thank you so much for being here. My question is, can you share a moment in your life, like whether it's like right now or like whether when you were younger, where you suffered like a challenge that really discouraged you, and how did you like learn from that experience to like become the person you are now?
Great question. I'd like to bring it back to when I was in undergrad. I mentioned to you that I wanted to be a doctor. And, I joke about this now, but at that time, it was really heartbreaking for me to not be able to become a doctor, because that was, my dad's dream was for me to become a doctor. And I remember struggling with that very much so, because I've always wanted to be a doctor, and I didn't know what I wanted to be without without having that, goal anymore. And how I got over that was really having strong people around me who were willing to not only listen to me, but be my cheerleaders and remind me of my capabilities, of the fact that this is just one of many failures that I will sure to be able to overcome. And you need strong people, good people like that in your life, because life is hard. It's not going to be a smooth path. You're you should be you should allow yourself that grace to change your path if needed. And the people around you should be able to support you in those decisions when you have to make them. And so I encourage you to find these good people in your different lives, and keep them around because you're going to need them throughout your life. Even now, at in my late 30s and now in my probably third career, I still have mentors around who I call when I run into these issues. And I think that that's the key, is to find people. They don't even have to be established mentors. Like when people think of mentors, they're like, oh, it's someone you regularly check in with. That's not always the case. There are some folks in my life who I haven't talked to for years, but when I need them and I call them, they would pick up. And so try to find those people, have that ability to stay grounded with those people, and also just find things that to do that will allow you to step away from the issue a little bit. Like for instance, some self-care things I started picking up on meditation, because that helps me clear my mind. That helps me to then make decisions when better decisions for myself. Or retail therapy also helps. Whatever works, but have those routine in your life so that you can feel more grounded and more supported, not only in yourself, but in the decisions that you make.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, June, for sharing. Thank you so much, Ms. Nguyen, for that great answer. We'll be moving on to, I think we'll probably have to end in 9 minutes, so I'm only going to take 2 more questions. Sorry, Kyle. We've got Jack up next.
All right, hi. Thank you so much. Thank you, Representative, for being here and talking to all of us. So my question is what would be kind of your advice or message to students and youth who maybe feel like weary or afraid to speak up about what they believe in? Because like me personally, like when I decided to kind of commit to my high school career to politics, I felt afraid to publicly identify myself as a Democrat because I was afraid of what other people would think. No, I don't feel that way now, but when starting, I did feel that way, but I was able to like work my way through it. But for the people who still may be afraid, like what would you say to them?
Great question. And I say that there's light at the end of the tunnel, in that we were all there. When you're younger, it is just so much harder to speak up for yourself because you're unsure of, even your own beliefs or how people are going to take it. Good news for you is, as you get older, you care less about what people think. Like, that is just human nature, because you're going to interact with other people and you're going to realize that everyone has very different opinions. No one person, no two people are alike, right? And so I think that you need to go back to what I was saying earlier about listening to find common ground, because when you build these relationships with people, it is easier to disagree because you have that foundation, you have that trust. And also to build that community of trust around you so that they can help empower you to speak up. Because I remember when I was in college or in high school, coincidentally, I'm looking back now, I'm actually coming up to my, believe it or not, 20th high school reunion is next week. And I just realized that, oh my goodness, my group of friends are all very much, they share the same priorities. They're very much doing similar things that I'm doing now, because I sought them out purposely when I was in high school to help me feel that, my beliefs were valid or valued. And I had someone to talk through these issues with. And so don't worry so much about being popular I think that the most important thing is to find good people around you because it's not as helpful to be liked by everyone as to be liked by a core group of people who will be there for you in the long run.
Right, thank you so much for that answer.
All right. Okay. Thank you again for your question, Jack, and your time. This one. Let's go for
No, I
Edwin.
know. I think Edwin has one more question. He
Yeah,
was
yeah. Sorry, I
waiting.
was about to say Edwin. My bad. No, you're perfectly all right. Go for it, Edwin.
Thank you, Representative, for coming here today and taking time out of your day to talk to us. I believe I met you like a month ago in Atlanta as well.
Oh, you were
So
there as well. That's
yeah,
great.
Yeah, he was.
Nice.
He came with me. We came as friends. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad. Oh, good, good, good.
So my question is also about the second Trump presidency. It's about how and what can blue states like Massachusetts do to mitigate Trump's policies. For example, about like the deportation of millions of undocumented immigrants, climate change, tariffs, whatever policy.
So how can states respond to that, to those policies? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, I guess particularly like blue states because blue states are more like Trump, like they have like majorities and like
Yeah, of course. So great question, but these are questions that we're all trying to decipher right now because I think the problem is he hasn't even taken office yet, right? So we don't know what policies he's going to put in place or try to change. And so what I would suggest for blue states to do is to build in the infrastructure now. I can give you an example. We just passed a sweeping climate change bill. He can't touch that, right? And that's what Massachusetts is doing so that to make sure that we're not regressing. And just past this past election, the past session, we passed a robust reproductive rights bill to not only protect pregnant people here, but also pregnant people coming here, protecting doctors and other providers. And so to put all of these policies in place, at the end of the day, I hope that he does not try to completely dismantle the Constitution, because at the states' rights is still a very real thing as part of the Constitution, and so he can't trample on the rights that we have established. Strong gun laws, for instance, too. And so my suggestion to blue states is to work on being proactive and it's called strategic foresight, meaning you're going to be strategic in how you're looking at the future and planning for that future. And so this is like a much longer conversation, and it's better to be had once we actually know what he is doing. Because frankly, they're throwing all these crazy names out there of like, folks that he wants to appoint. Who knows who's actually going to make the appointment at this point? And so my suggestion goes back to what I was saying earlier. Stay engaged with these democratic organizations in your district or your state because lots of changes will be happening very quickly. And you want to be plugged in when that happens, right? But I can't tell you exactly what will happen because we don't exactly know what he's going to do.
I have a quick follow-up question
Sure.
about like the states' rights thing.
Mhm.
Like, isn't there like a dilemma between like how like Democrats like view like the federal government's role? Like we sort of want to expand like our like the federal government's reach over the states to like to lead to progress, but like we also like want states' rights in this context to prevent like the federal government from infringing on rights and rolling back progress.
Yeah, it's a tough issue. I mean, when we have a certain administration where we want to federalize a lot of the rights, because as you've seen in the last few years, many of the policy changes have come from the state level, right? Whether that's reproductive rights or climate change and all, or even protection for workers, minimum wage, workers' comp, unemployment. So all of these states' rights issues have come from the state to model for the federal level. But when the federal level where there's no hope of them federalizing everything, you just have to make your states' rights stronger and be prepared for people coming in. So for Massachusetts, we're looking to ramp up our infrastructure, because we're anticipating that a lot of folks will be coming into our states for protections of their civil rights, for reproductive health, and for other things. And so it's about us being prepared for that sort of migration, because as divided as you've seen our country, I think it's only going to get more divided as blue people are going to go blue states, and people who are more conservative going to red states. And so it's this ongoing conversation of how do we go back to our states, make it stronger, and then work with other states who are similar to us to then strengthen those rights and protections. I know I'm not giving you a complete answer because I don't have the complete answer. It's a work in
Thank
progress
you
that
so
we all need to
much.
work.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here with us. The High School Democrats of America AAPI Caucus definitely has had the best time hosting you. We hope to host you again at some point soon, maybe even like later on in the year for a different thing. It would be great. Honestly, it's been great getting to know you, getting to know your story, and we're so happy you decided to come on. We do have to end the event here, but thank you guys all for coming, and thank you especially Ms. Nguyen for taking the time out of your day to talk to us.
And great job, Ankita, for moderating. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right, thank you.